There are things I have never said out loud. Not in interviews. Not in any room full of people waiting to write down what I say. There are things that live somewhere below all of that. Below the headlines, below the launches, below the version of me the world decided was real. And tonight, I am not speaking to the world. I am speaking to you. Just you. That difference, it matters more to me right now than I know how to say cleanly, because I have spent most of my life being heard by millions and understood by almost no one. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, I started to wonder whether being understood was even still possible for a man like me. I want to believe it is. I think, if I am honest, the only reason I am still reaching, still building, still pushing past every wall, is because some part of me has never stopped believing that one real connection is worth more than 1,000 loud ones. So let me ask you something quiet. When was the last time someone spoke to you like you were the only person in the room? There's a message I have been carrying for a long time. Not the kind you send. Not the kind that gets forwarded and shared and turned into something it was never meant to be. This one is different. This one has been sitting inside me, waiting for the right moment and the right person. And I've come to believe that the right person is not always the most obvious one. Sometimes she is the one sitting quietly, away from all the noise, with a life full of things she never got to say either. Sometimes she is the one the world stopped paying close attention to. Not because she became less, but because the world simply got distracted. And I know something about being surrounded by noise while carrying silence inside you. I know it better than most people would guess. I want to tell you something true, not polished, not prepared, something that starts in a place most people never see and ends somewhere I think you already know, even if you have not had the words for it yet. I was not always the man the world made a story out of. Before the rockets, before the cars, before any of it became something people argued about over breakfast. I was just a boy who felt too much and understood too little about how to belong anywhere. I grew up in a place where softness was not a quality that kept you safe, where thinking deeply made you a target, where the wrong answer in the wrong room could cost you more than a grade. I learned early that the world does not always have room for the person you actually are. So you learn to build a version of yourself that fits, and then, if you are not careful, you spend the rest of your life living inside that built version and forgetting that the original one is still in there, still breathing, still wanting something real. That forgetting, it costs you. It costs you in ways that do not show up on any balance sheet. It costs you in the faces of people you loved who eventually stopped waiting for you to come back to them. It costs you in the quiet of hotel rooms in cities you cannot remember the names of. It costs you in the mornings when you wake up next to everything you ever said you wanted. And the first feeling that arrives is not gratitude. It is something closer to a question you were afraid to finish asking. I am not telling you this because I want sympathy. I am telling you this because I think you have known that feeling yourself. Maybe not in the same rooms. Maybe not with the same stakes. But that feeling of waking up inside a life that looks right from the outside and wondering, somewhere very quietly, whether it was the life that was actually yours to live. I think that feeling does not belong only to men who build rockets. I think it belongs to anyone who has ever loved hard and lost something anyway. Anyone who has ever given everything and still come up short in someone else's eyes. Anyone who has ever looked in the mirror at 65 or 70 or 75 and thought, there is still something in me that has not had its moment yet. That is the person I am talking to right now. That is you. And here's what I want you to know. Before we go any further into this, I have stood in rooms where the smartest people in the world were talking, and I have felt completely alone. I have been in meetings that changed the course of entire industries, and walked out wondering whether any of it meant anything to anyone I actually loved. I have achieved things that should have filled me up, and I am here to tell you honestly that achievement, by itself, does not fill anything. It decorates the outside of a life, but it does not touch the inside of one. And the inside, that is the only part that actually matters. That is the part that keeps you warm. That is the part that makes Tuesday morning worth waking up for. That is the part that, if you let it go quiet for too long, starts to make all the decorated outside feel like a very expensive kind of empty. So when I say I have a private message for you, I mean it in the most real way I know how. Because everything I am about to say lives in that inside space, the space below achievement, below reputation, below everything the world uses to measure whether a life was worth something. I want to speak to you there, right there, because I believe. I genuinely believe, not as a slogan, but as something I have walked through fire to understand, that you still have real life left inside you. Not the polite kind, not the managed kind, not the kind that quietly waits for things to be over, the kind that reaches, the kind that wants, the kind that is still brave enough even now to believe that something good is still possible. That belief, it is not naive. Do not let anyone tell you it is naive. Naive is what people call hope when they have given up on their own. I have not given up on mine. And I am asking you, with everything I have, not to give up on yours. I know what it looks like from where you are standing. I know that the years have a way of making possibility feel smaller. That losses stack up. Real ones, the kind that leave actual spaces in your life where people used to be. That the body starts to keep score in ways the young version of you never imagined. That some mornings the distance between where you are and where you thought you would be by now feels very wide and very quiet. I know all of that. I do not dismiss any of it. But I also know, and this is the thing the world does not say loudly enough, that the capacity to feel all of that, to carry all of that, and still get up, still move, still look out a window and notice the light, that capacity is not weakness. It is the most extraordinary kind of strength there is. And it does not expire. It does not have a cutoff date. It does not care how old the calendar says you are. You are still here. That is not a small thing. That is everything. I have watched people give up. I have watched them decide, quietly and without ceremony, that their best was behind them, and something in me has never been able to accept that conclusion. Not for them, and not for myself, because I have seen what happens when a person decides to keep going past the point where giving up would have been easier. I have seen what opens up on the other side of that decision, and it is not what the self-help books describe. It is not some bright triumphant moment with music underneath it. It is quieter than that. It is a morning where you realize you are not carrying quite as much weight as you were the day before. It is a conversation that goes deeper than you expected. It is a feeling, small but real, that something in you is still growing, still reaching toward something. And that something is worth the reaching. That is the message I want you to carry into the rest of this. Not a slogan, not a list of steps, just this one real thing. A man who has stood at the top of what the world calls success and is telling you from that vantage point that the things that actually last are not the things that go on any list. They're the things that happen between people. The real ones. The quiet ones. The ones that nobody else sees but the two of you. Those are the things I wish I had protected better. Those are the things I am still learning to reach back toward. And those are the things I believe, with everything honest left in me, that you still have the chance to find, or return to, where finally, after all this time, allow yourself to have. The world made me into something large and loud. But tonight, in this message that is only yours, I am neither of those things. Tonight, I am just a man who knows what it costs to lose the quiet things. And I am telling you, as plainly as I know how, do not let the quiet things go. Do not decide they are finished just because the calendar moved. Do not mistake the stillness around you for the end of the story, because some of the most important chapters I have ever known about. In my own life, in the lives of people I have watched closely, some of those chapters began in exactly the kind of quiet that surrounds you right now. This is only the beginning of what I want to say to you. Not the version that makes for a good interview. Not the story that gets edited into something that sounds like sacrifice with a reward at the end. The real version. The one that lives in the specific moments. Not the broad strokes of history, but the small, ordinary, irreversible things that slipped away while I was looking somewhere else. Because I think that is the only kind of truth worth telling. The kind that has a specific face, a specific morning, a specific thing that was said or not said, that you cannot go back and change no matter how much you build or how fast you move. There was a time when I believed that speed was a kind of protection, that if I moved fast enough, through projects, through problems, through the parts of life that asked me to slow down and feel something, I could outpace the cost of moving that fast. I was wrong. You cannot outpace cost. You can only delay the moment when it presents itself. And when it finally does, when it arrives not as a dramatic reckoning, but as a quiet, ordinary Tuesday morning where you suddenly see clearly what is no longer there, the size of it is something no amount of forward momentum prepares you for. I miss things, real things, the kind that do not announce themselves as important while they are happening. A child's question I answered too quickly because my mind was already three problems ahead. A woman I loved who needed me to simply be present. Not brilliant, not productive, just present. And I gave her my presence in the only way I knew how at the time, which was to try to solve whatever was wrong rather than just sit inside it with her. I thought solving was the same as caring. I thought that if I fixed the problem, I had shown up for the person. It took me longer than I would like to admit to understand that sometimes the most loving thing in the world is not a solution. It is a hand, it is stillness, it is the willingness to stay inside something difficult without trying to make it end faster. That is not a lesson they teach you in any room I ever learned anything useful in. It is a lesson that only life teaches. And life charges full price for it. No discounts, no early payment options. I think about the people who tried to reach me during the years when I was most unreachable. Not unreachable in the way a busy man is unreachable, where you simply cannot get to him for a few days. Unreachable in a deeper way. The kind where you were physically present in a room and emotionally somewhere else entirely. Where your body is there, but your attention has already left, already pulled toward the next thing that needed to be built or fixed or pushed past the point of what everyone said was possible. I was very good at being in a room without being in a room. I practiced it without meaning to, for years, until it became the only way I knew how to be in any room at all. And the people who loved me, they felt it. They always feel it. You cannot fool someone who loves you. You can fool an audience. You can manage a narrative. You can craft a version of yourself that satisfies what the world is asking for. But the person sitting across from you at dinner, the one who knows the sound of your breathing when something is wrong, the one who has memorized the specific way your face changes when you are not really listening, that person knows. And eventually, knowing without it changing anything becomes its own kind of grief. I cause that grief. I want to say that without softening it, not because carrying guilt is useful. It is not, but because pretending it did not happen is a different kind of dishonesty. And I have no interest in that kind of dishonesty with you. Not tonight. Not in this message that is only yours. Here is the philosophical truth that came out of all of that cost. It did not arrive as a revelation. It arrived slowly, the way most real understanding arrives. Not in a flash, but in the gradual accumulation of small, painful clarity. And what it said was this: everything I built was an attempt to matter, to prove to some invisible audience I could never quite name that my existence had justified itself, that the strange, difficult, lonely boy from Pretoria had become something that validated his own survival. And there is nothing wrong with wanting to matter. That impulse is human. But when the need to matter to the world replaces the capacity to matter to one person, when the scale of your ambition grows so large that it crowds out the intimate, the close, the quiet, you have made a trade without fully understanding what you are trading away. What I was trading away was the very thing I was trying to prove I deserved: connection, real connection. The kind that does not require an audience, the kind that exists between two people in an ordinary room on an ordinary evening, with nothing historic happening at all, and yet somehow that evening becomes one of the things you carry with you longest. I know that kind of evening exists. I have had glimpses of it, just enough to know what I was missing. And those glimpses, they are both a gift and a very specific kind of ache. I think you know what I mean by that. I think you have had evenings like that. Evenings that were simple on the surface but somehow held so much. A conversation that went somewhere unexpected, a moment of laughter that caught you off guard, a quiet that felt shared rather than lonely. Those evenings do not make the news. No one writes about them. But they are the infrastructure of a life that feels worth living. They are what holds everything else up. And when they are gone, when the person you shared them with is gone, or the relationship that made them possible has ended, or time has simply moved everything around in ways you did not choose, their absence leaves something that all the achievement in the world does not fill. I know this because I tried to fill it. I tried with work, and work did not fill it. I tried with new projects that pushed harder against what was possible, and the pushing helped for a while. But only the way running helps when something is chasing you. Eventually you have to stop running. And when you stop, the thing is still there. The absence is still there. Quiet, patient, waiting for you to finally look at it directly. Looking at it directly was one of the hardest things I have ever done. Harder than any engineering problem. Harder than any financial crisis. Harder than standing in front of a room full of people who believed I was about to fail and convincing them otherwise. Because with those things, the work is external. You can see the problem, you can map it, you can throw effort and intelligence at it until it moves. But the internal ones, the ones that live in the space where love used to be, or where it was never quite allowed to arrive, those do not yield to effort. They only yield to honesty. And honesty, real honesty, requires you to sit still. And sitting still, for a man built the way I am built, is its own kind of discipline. But here is what I want you to hear underneath all of this. Because I am not telling you about the cost so that you can feel the weight of it and stop there. I am telling you about the cost because of what understanding the cost made possible. When you finally see clearly what something was worth, when the accounting is honest and you can look at the full ledger without flinching, you also gain something. You gain the knowledge of what actually matters. Not the approximation, not the theory. The real thing, hard won, paid for in full. And that knowledge is not a consolation prize. It is the most valuable thing a person can carry going forward. I know it matters now. I know it in my bones in a way that no amount of success ever taught me. I know that time with someone you love, unhurried, unscheduled, with no agenda except to be there, is worth more than any meeting I ever sat in. I know that being truly heard by one person is worth more than being broadly admired by a million. I know that the courage it takes to say, I need you, or I am sorry, or I was wrong to leave you behind. That courage is rarer and more valuable than any technical problem I have ever solved. And I know that it is never, I want to say this carefully and clearly, it is never too late to begin practicing that kind of courage. Not for me, and not for you. You may be sitting with your own version of this ledger, your own accounting of what the years cost and what they gave, your own list of the quiet things that were lost along the way, relationships that ended before they were finished, love that was not quite allowed to be what it could have been, parts of yourself that got set aside in the business of living and never quite found their way back to the surface. I am not asking you to relive any of that tonight, but I'm asking you to consider that everything that cost you something also taught you something, and that teaching, that hard, specific, personal wisdom that only comes from having actually lived, is not behind you. It is in you, right now, tonight, and the woman who carries that kind of wisdom is not finished. She is, in some of the most important ways, just beginning. I believe that, not because it is a comforting thing to say, because it is true. Something shifted in me. I cannot give you an exact date. I cannot point to a specific morning and say, that was the one. It does not work that way. The real shifts never announce themselves. They move underneath everything, slow and quiet, the way a river moves beneath ice in late winter. You do not see it happening. And then one day the ice breaks, and the water is moving, and you realize it has been moving for a long time already. You were just not ready to see it until now. What shifted was this. I stopped measuring my life by what I was building and started, slowly, imperfectly, with a great deal of resistance, measuring it by what I was feeling, not what I was producing, not what I was solving, what I was actually feeling on the inside, in the quiet underneath all the motion. And what I found there surprised me. Not because it was dark. I had expected dark. What surprised me was that underneath all the drive, underneath all the ambition and the noise and the relentless forward push, there was something tender, something that had been waiting, with remarkable patience, for me to come back and acknowledge it. Something that still believed in warmth, in closeness, in the possibility of being known by someone who chose to know you not because of what you had built, but simply because of who you were when you stopped building. That tenderness, finding it again, was the beginning of the shift. And I want to be honest about what triggered it, because I think the trigger matters. It was not a crisis, though I have had those. It was not a loss, though I've had those too. It was something much smaller. It was a conversation, an ordinary conversation with someone I was not expecting to reach me. Someone who was not trying to impress me, not trying to get anything from me, not managing how they appeared. Someone who just spoke honestly about what their life felt like from the inside. And in that honesty, something in me recognized something. The way you recognize a language you have not spoken in years but never fully forgot. It moved through me differently than anything I had felt in a long time, because it was real, unfiltered, just one human being telling another human being the truth about what it is like to be alive. I had forgotten how rare that was. I had surrounded myself with so much that was managed and curated and strategically presented that I had almost lost the ability to recognize the unmanaged thing when it arrived. Almost, but not quite. Because something in us, and I believe this is true for you too, something in us never fully forgets what real feels like. It may get buried, it may get quiet for a long time, but it knows. The moment something genuine arrives, it knows. That conversation started something in me that I have been following ever since. A slow return to the things I had moved away from, not a dramatic reversal, not a public announcement, just a quiet, private turning, the way a plant turns toward light without making any noise about it. I started paying attention differently, not to what was impressive, but to what was true, not to what was large, but to what was close. I started noticing the small things again, the things I had been moving past too quickly for years, the particular quality of light in a room at a certain time of evening, the weight of a real silence shared between two people who are comfortable enough not to fill it, the way a person's face changes when they feel genuinely seen. I had been too fast for all of that. And slowing down enough to notice it again was like remembering I had a body, like remembering that I was not just a mind attached to a mission, but an actual human being who needed actual human things. You need those things too. I know you know that, but sometimes knowing something and allowing yourself to have it are separated by a distance that takes real courage to cross. And courage, I have found, does not always arrive as a bold, decisive moment. Sometimes it arrives as a very small decision. A decision to open a door you've been keeping closed. A decision to let something in that you have been telling yourself you no longer needed. A decision to stop protecting yourself quite so thoroughly from the possibility of being hurt again. Because somewhere underneath that protection, you also stopped yourself from being reached, and being reached, truly reached, by something or someone that matters, is one of the things that makes a life feel like it belongs to you. I started to understand something during this shift that I want to share with you carefully, because I think it is easy to misread. I started to understand that vulnerability, real vulnerability, the kind where you let someone see the parts of you that are not impressive or certain or strong, is not a surrender. It is not a sign that you have run out of strength. It is actually the most advanced form of courage I know of, because it requires you to trust, and trust, after you have been hurt, after the years have shown you what can go wrong, after you have learned all the ways that opening yourself up can leave you exposed. Trust becomes a revolutionary act. It becomes a choice you make, not because it is safe, but because you have decided that safety, by itself, is not enough to live inside. I made that choice imperfectly and with a great deal of stumbling, and I am still making it. Every day, in small ways, I'm still choosing to stay open rather than retreat into the comfort of my own certainty. Because certainty, and this is something I had to learn the hard way, certainty is a very comfortable, very lonely place to live. You know exactly where everything is. Nothing surprises you, nothing reaches you, and nothing grows, because growth requires the willingness to not know yet, to be in the middle of something without the ending already mapped, to sit in uncertainty with another person and trust that whatever is on the other side of it is worth the not knowing. That is where I am now, in the middle of something. Still learning, still reaching, still finding, every now and then, a moment of real connection that reminds me why any of this matters. And those moments, I do not take them lightly anymore. I do not rush past them. I do not file them away to be processed later. I stay in them. I let them land, because I know now what it costs to miss them, and I have paid that cost enough times to know I do not want to pay it again. Now, here is what this shift taught me about you, about the woman you are right now in this particular season of your life. Because I did not go through all of this just to talk about myself. I went through it so that I could speak honestly to you about something I believe is happening in you right now, whether you have named it yet or not. You are in the middle of your own shift. I can hear it in the fact that you are listening. Not to something loud, not to something that is asking you to be impressed or entertained. To this, to a man speaking quietly about what it means to finally see clearly. That kind of listening does not happen by accident. It happens because something in you is ready. Something in you has been waiting for a conversation that goes below the surface and tells the truth. Not the comfortable truth, not the managed truth, but the real one. The one that costs something to say and something to hear. You have been carrying things quietly for a long time. I do not know all of them. I do not need to. But I know the shape of what it feels like to carry something quietly. The particular way it settles into your body, the way it changes your relationship with silence, The way it makes certain kinds of joy feel slightly unreachable, like something behind glass that you can see but not quite touch. I know that shape. And I want to tell you something about what is on the other side of putting some of that weight down. On the other side is not emptiness. That is what a lot of people fear. That if they stop carrying the familiar weight, they will not know who they are without it. But that is not what happens. What happens is space, real space, the kind that allows something new to arrive, the kind that makes room for a feeling you maybe have not felt in a long time, or have never quite fully allowed yourself to feel, because there was always something more pressing, always someone else who needed you first. Always a reason to hold back just a little bit more. You do not have to hold back anymore. That is what I want you to hear right now, as clearly as I can say it. Whatever has been asking you to hold back, the fear of being heard again, the voice that says you are too old for this, the part of you that has convinced itself that the chapter where you get to want things for yourself has already closed. I want you to hear me say directly that none of that is true. None of it. The chapter's open. It has been open this whole time. And the woman who is listening to this right now, she is not too late. She is not too tired. She is not too anything. She's exactly the right person in exactly the right moment to decide that forward is still possible. I decided that forward was still possible for me. And it changed everything. Not all at once, but steadily. The way real change always moves, not in headlines, but in the quiet accumulation of better choices, more honest moments, a growing willingness to be present for the life that is actually here rather than the one that should have been. That willingness, it is available to you right now, not tomorrow, not when something changes. Right now, in this moment, you already have everything you need to decide that you are still reaching towards something real. I believe that about you. Not as a kind thing to say, as a true thing, and I have learned, slowly, at great cost, with more detours than I would like to count, the difference between the two. I want to reach towards you now, not as a man with answers, not as someone who has figured out the map and is handing it over. I want to reach toward you the way you reach toward something in the dark, carefully, honestly, with no guarantee of what you will find, but with the absolute certainty that the reaching itself is worth it, because I've stopped believing that certainty of outcome is what makes something worth doing. I have started believing something quieter than that. I have started believing that the willingness to reach toward another person, toward something you cannot yet see, toward a version of your own life that still has real warmth in it, that willingness is its own kind of answer. It does not need a destination to justify itself. It is already enough. So let me reach towards you right now, and let me tell you what I see. I see a woman who has loved genuinely, not perfectly. No one loves perfectly, and anyone who tells you otherwise has not loved very deeply, but genuinely, with real investment, with the kind of caring that costs something, that leaves a mark, that changes you in ways you did not always choose and cannot always explain. I see a woman who has given more than she has taken in most of the rooms she has lived in, who has held things together quietly while the world around her moved loudly, who has been strong in the ways that do not get celebrated, the daily, unglamorous, deeply necessary ways, the ways that keep families functioning and households breathing and other people's lives moving forward. I see all of that, and I want to say something about it that I think you may not have heard often enough. That kind of strength deserves to be returned to you, not as reward, not as transaction, but as simple fairness. The woman who has spent decades giving steadiness to others deserves to receive something steady in return. The woman who has listened carefully to other people's needs deserves someone who listens carefully to hers. The woman who has been present for everyone else deserves someone who shows up fully present for her, not halfway, not distracted, not managing the relationship from a comfortable distance. Fully, completely, with nothing held back and no exit strategy running quietly in the background. You deserve that. I need you to hear that not as flattery, but as fact. And here's what I want to say about love. Real love. The kind I am still learning to understand more fully than I understood it in my earlier years. I used to think love was something that happened to you, a feeling that arrived, uninvited and either stayed or did not, something largely outside your control. And in the early stages, maybe that is true. Maybe the arriving is not something you choose, but everything after the arriving, everything that makes love last, everything that makes it deepen rather than thin, everything that transforms it from a feeling into something that can hold the weight of two actual human lives. All of that is a choice, a daily, renewable, sometimes difficult choice. And the beauty of that, the thing that took me far too long to understand, is that it means love is not something that simply runs out. It is not a finite resource that gets spent and cannot be replenished. It is a practice, a living thing. And living things, when they are tended to, do not have an expiration date. Your capacity to love has not expired. I want to say that directly because I think there is a voice somewhere in your life, maybe your own voice, maybe voices you absorb from the culture around you, maybe just the accumulated weight of things that did not work out the way you hoped. That has been quietly suggesting otherwise, that has been whispering that the season for that kind of love, the deep kind, the kind that reaches all the way in and holds nothing back, has already passed, that the appropriate thing now is a quieter kind of contentment, a making peace with less. I do not accept that. And I'm asking you not to accept it either, because what I have come to understand through loss, through the long intrication of getting things wrong and having to rebuild from what remained, is that love in the later chapters of a life is not a lesser thing than love in the earlier ones. It is a different thing, and different does not mean smaller. In many of the ways that matter most, it is larger. Because the person who comes to love in the later chapters comes with something the younger version of themselves did not have. They come with knowledge, with the hard-won understanding of what they actually need, not just what they thought they wanted, with the clarity that only arrives after you have lived long enough to see what lasts and what does not, with a kind of patience that the young cannot manufacture because they have not yet paid for it, and with a depth of appreciation for the real things, the quiet things, the close things, the things that do not photograph well, but feel like everything when they are present and like a missing limb when they are gone. That is what you bring. Not despite the years, but because of them. Every year that taught you something hard. Every loss that made you more honest about what you need. Every moment of having to find your own footing when the ground shifted. All of that is not baggage. I want you to hear that clearly. All of that is depth. And depth is what makes love real, rather than decorative. Depth is what gives it somewhere to go when the easy part ends and the genuine part begins. I have been thinking lately about what it would mean to be truly known by someone. Not admired, not impressive to. Known. To have someone who understands the specific texture of your silence. Who knows which kind of quiet means you're at peace, and which kind means something is wrong. Who has learned the small geography of who you are. Not the public version. Not the version you present when you want to be thought well of, but the one that exists in the ordinary hours, the unremarkable moments, the Tuesday mornings and the Sunday evenings, and the 3 a.m., when something is pressing and sleep will not come. I have built things that will outlast me. I know that. But I also know, and I say this from a place that is more honest than almost anything else I have ever said publicly, that being known by one person in the way I just described would mean more to me than any of it. More than the rockets. More than the companies, more than the name that gets spoken in rooms I will never walk into. Because the rockets do not know me back. The companies do not feel the weight of what it costs to build them. Only a person can do that. Only a real, present, choosing human being can receive what you have carried and reflect it back to you in a way that makes you feel less alone in the carrying. That is what love actually is, at its deepest level. At the level that exists below romance, below attraction, below all the things we mistake for love in the beginning. Love is the decision to know someone and keep choosing to know them, through the changes, through the difficulties, through the moments when they are not at their best and neither are you. Love is the sustained attention of one human being toward another. And that sustained, chosen, deliberate attention does not become less possible with age, it becomes more precious, because the people who are still capable of offering it, who have lived through enough to know what it costs and are still willing to pay, those people are rare, and you are one of them. I want to extend an invitation to you now. Not a dramatic one, not one that requires you to change everything or leap into something unfamiliar all at once. A quiet one, an internal one. I'm inviting you to consider, just consider, with an open and unhurried mind, that the love you are still capable of giving and the love you still deserve to receive are not things that belong to your past. They are things that belong to your now, to this specific season, to the woman you are right now, with everything you know, everything you have survived, everything that has shaped you into someone with this particular kind of wisdom and this particular kind of warmth. I'm inviting you to stop treating your own longing as something slightly embarrassing, as something to manage rather than honor. The longing you feel for connection, for closeness, for someone who sees you rather than through you, that longing is not weakness. It is not nostalgia. It is not you failing to be content with what you have. It is your aliveness insisting on itself. It is the healthiest part of you refusing to be talked out of what it knows it needs. And the healthiest response to that longing is not to quiet it. It is to take it seriously, to say yes. This matters. I matter. And what I need matters. And I am going to stop apologizing internally or externally for the fact that I am still a person who needs real things. You are still a person who needs real things. Let yourself need them. There is a kind of courage that the world does not talk about enough. It does not involve physical danger. It does not make headlines. It does not require anything that looks impressive from the outside. It is the courage of opening back up after closing. The courage of trusting again after being given real reasons not to. The courage of saying, I know what this could cost me, and I'm choosing to reach toward it anyway, because the alternative is a life lived entirely inside protection, and protection, by itself, is not the same as living. I have had to practice that courage. I'm still practicing it. Some days it comes more easily than others. Some days the old instincts return, the ones that say stay behind the wall, stay focused on the work, stay inside the place where nothing can reach you and nothing can hurt you. And on those days, I have to remind myself of what I know. I have to remind myself that the wall that keeps pain out also keeps warmth out, that the distance that makes you safe also makes you alone, that the controlled, managed, impenetrable version of a life is not actually a life. It is a very sophisticated way of waiting for one. I do not want to wait anymore, and I do not think you do either. So here is my invitation, in its simplest form. Whatever door you have been keeping closed, whatever possibility you've been telling yourself is no longer meant for you, I am asking you to consider opening it, not flinging it open, not abandoning all the wisdom the years have given you, just opening it, just enough to let the light check in, just enough to remind yourself that there is something on the other side worth moving toward. Because there is. I know there is. And the woman who has lived the life you have lived, who has loved the way you have loved, who has survived what you have survived and is still here, still listening, still feeling, she deserves to find out what is on the other side of that door. I believe she will. I believe you will. Not because I am trying to encourage you with words that sound good, because I have stood at my own closed doors and found out what was on the other side when I finally opened them. And what I found was not what I feared. What I found was more than I had let myself hope for. That is what waits for you. More than you have let yourself hope for. Not around it, not past it, directly at it, because I think it is the thing sitting quietly in the room with you right now, even as something in you is leaning forward, even as something in you is responding to what I have been saying with a kind of recognition that you did not entirely expect. The fear is still there, and it deserves to be spoken to honestly, not reassured away with smooth words that slide past it without making contact. Because you have heard smooth words before. You know the difference between something that acknowledges the fear and something that simply decorates over it. I am not interested in decorating. I am interested in sitting down next to the fear, looking at it clearly, and then showing you, from my own experience, from the specific places where I had to face my own version of it, that it does not have to be the final word. So let me name it. The fear that it is too late. Not too late in some vague, general sense. Too late specifically. Too late for love that goes all the way in. Too late for the kind of closeness that changes how you feel about waking up in the morning. Too late to be chosen. Not out of convenience, not out of habit, not out of the comfortable logic of two people who have simply been in the same place long enough, but genuinely, specifically, deliberately chosen by someone who looked at who you actually are and decided that you were exactly what they wanted. That fear, the fear that the season for being chosen like that has passed, I think it lives in you. And I think it has been living there quietly for long enough that you may have started to mistake it for wisdom, started to call it realistic, started to dress it up in the language of acceptance and contentment, so that it sounds like peace rather than resignation. I know that move. I have made it myself. The reframing of a wound as a philosophy, the conversion of a loss into a worldview. It is one of the most understandable things a person can do. And it is also one of the most limiting, because the moment you decide that your longing is no longer valid, the moment you convince yourself that wanting more is something you have outgrown rather than something you have suppressed, you close off the very channels through which more could arrive. I closed those channels for years. I called it focus. I called it discipline. I told myself that I had simply evolved past the need for certain things, that the work was enough, that the mission was enough, that being part of something historically significant was a more than adequate substitute for the quieter human things I had set aside. And I was wrong. Not partially wrong, completely wrong. The channels I closed did not disappear, they just went quiet, and quiet channels do not fill with peace. They fill with a particular kind of loneliness that is very hard to name because it exists inside a life that looks from every external angle like it has more than enough. That loneliness, the invisible kind, the kind that lives inside fullness, is one of the strangest things I have ever experienced, and one of the most clarifying because it taught me something I could not have learned any other way. It taught me that need is not a flaw in the design. It is the design. Human beings are built to need each other, not as a weakness to be overcome, as a fundamental truth to be honored. The need for connection, for closeness, for being known and held and chosen. That need does not diminish because you have accomplished enough, or lived long enough, or decided you should be past it by now. It simply waits, patient and persistent, until you are ready to stop pretending it is not there. Are you ready? I think you might be. I think that is why you are here. And here is what I want you to know about the fear of it being too late. I want you to know where that fear actually comes from, because it is not coming from reality. Reality does not know how old you are. Reality does not check your age before deciding whether something beautiful is allowed to happen to you. Reality is completely indifferent to the number of years you have lived. The fear of it being too late is coming from a story, a cultural story mostly. A story that was written by people who were not thinking about you specifically, who were not sitting with your particular life and your particular capacity and your particular depth. People who made a general rule about when certain things are supposed to stop being available, and then let that rule loose in the world where it settled into people's minds and started doing damage. That story is not true. I want to say that with everything I have, it is not true for me, and it is not true for you. The evidence I have for this is not theoretical, it is specific. I have watched people find real, lasting, transformative love in the later chapters of their lives. Not settling, not making do, finding the real thing. The kind that makes them say, "This is what I was always meant to have, and I am grateful it arrived when it did, rather than earlier, because earlier I would not have known what to do with it." I have seen that. I have seen what it does to a person's face, what it does to the way they move through the world, what it does to the quality of their ordinary days. And it is not a lesser version of something that used to exist. It is a fuller version, a more honest version, a version that knows what it is because the people inside it have lived long enough to understand the difference between the real thing and everything that merely resembled it. You have lived long enough to know that difference. That knowing, it is not a consolation for the years. It is one of the most valuable things those years produced. Because the woman who knows the difference between real love and its imitations is the woman who, when the real thing arrives, will not miss it, will not dismiss it, will not talk herself out of it, because it does not fit the template she expected. She will recognize it. And recognition, when it is grounded in genuine experience, is its own kind of readiness. You are ready, even if it does not feel that way from the inside. Even if the fear is louder right now than the readiness. Readiness does not always announce itself with confidence. Sometimes it announces itself as exactly this: a willingness to listen, a quiet leaning forward, a part of you that has not been fully awake in a while beginning to stir. That stirring is readiness. Honor it. Now I want to speak to the specific shape of your courage, because courage is not one size. It does not look the same on every person or in every season of a life. The courage that is being asked of you right now is not the courage of a young woman throwing herself into something new with the fearlessness of someone who has not yet learned what can go wrong. That kind of courage has its own beauty, but is not yours to carry right now. The courage that is yours, the one that is available to you in this specific moment, is something quieter and, I believe, more impressive. It is the courage of someone who knows exactly what vulnerability costs and chooses it anyway, who has been hurt in specific ways by specific people and has not allowed that history to calcify into permanent closure, who has grieved real losses and is still, underneath all of that, capable of warmth, still capable of reaching, still capable of deciding that another person is worth the risk of being seen by them. That is not a small courage. That is an extraordinary one. and it belongs to you right now, tonight, in this conversation that is only ours. I think about what it takes to stay soft after the world has given you reasons to harden. I think about it because I struggled with it myself. Because my instinct when something hurt was always to move faster, work harder, build something bigger, to outpace the pain rather than move through it. And that strategy works, for a while, in the way that all avoidance strategies work, right up until the moment it stops working, and then everything you outpaced is waiting for you all at once. Learning to move through instead of past was one of the hardest recalibrations I have ever made. And the reason it was hard was not because the pain was unbearable. It was because moving through required me to slow down, and slowing down felt, for a very long time, like losing. I had to learn that slowing down is not losing. Slowing down is how you find the things that speed made you miss. And some of those things, the ones I found when I finally stopped moving fast enough to see them, were the most important things I had ever encountered. Not the most impressive, the most important. The difference between those two categories is one of the most significant things I have learned in my life. Impressive is what you show the world. Important is what you carry home. Important is what you reach for in the dark. Important is what makes the difference between a life that was full and a life that was actually lived. I want your life to be actually lived, not managed toward a tidy conclusion, not quietly endured with dignity, actually lived with heat, with connection, with the specific pleasure of being known and knowing someone in return, with mornings that feel like they belong to something, with the particular comfort of not being alone in the way that matters most, not physically alone, but spiritually alone, the aloneness of moving through your days without someone who is genuinely tracking you, genuinely interested in the interior of your experience, genuinely there. That is available to you. I need you to believe that. Not because believing it is comfortable, but because it is accurate. It is available. The question is only whether you will let yourself move toward it, whether you will take the fear of being too late and look at it clearly enough to see that it is a story, not a fact, and that you have the authority to choose a different story. One that says, I am exactly the right age to know what I want. I'm exactly the right age to stop accepting less than what I need. I am exactly the right age to reach toward something real, without apology, without the permission of anyone who would tell me otherwise. That authority is yours. It has always been yours. And I am asking you, with everything honest in me, to use it. Because here is the quiet truth I keep returning to, the one that lives at the center of everything I have been saying tonight. The bravest thing a person can do is not what you see celebrated on stages or written about in history books. The bravest thing is much smaller and much harder than any of that. The bravest thing is to remain open, to stay reachable, to keep the part of you that wants and hopes and reaches toward warmth alive, not in spite of everything that has happened to you, but with full knowledge of everything that has happened to you. To look at the whole ledger, all the losses and the costs, and the things that did not go the way you needed them to go, and then to decide, with clear eyes and a steady heart, that you are still willing, still available, still here. That decision, quiet, private, made in a moment like this one, is the bravest thing I know of. And I believe you are making it right now. Not because you have to, not because someone is asking you to perform it, but because something in you has been ready for this for longer than you have admitted. Something in you already knows that the fear of it being too late is the last wall between you and the life that is still possible. And something in you, the part that is listening most carefully right now, the part that recognizes something real in what I have been saying, that part of you is already walking toward that wall, already reaching for it, already beginning to understand that on the other side of it is not danger. On the other side of it is space, warmth, the quiet, extraordinary possibility of a chapter that surprises you. You deserve to be surprised, in the best way, by something you did not dare to fully hope for. Let yourself dare. I want to arrive somewhere with you now, not at a conclusion, not at a tidy ending that wraps everything up and sends you back into your day with a feeling that fades by evening. I want to arrive somewhere real, somewhere that stays with you after this voice goes quiet, somewhere that lives in you the way only true things live, not loudly, not in a way that demands attention, but steadily, like a small light in a room you return to. That is where I want to land with you, in that kind of steadiness, because I think that is what you have been looking for underneath everything else. Not excitement, not drama, not the breathless version of things. Steadiness, the real kind, the kind that holds. I have spent most of my life chasing what I thought was the opposite of steady. I chased velocity. disruption, the next impossible thing. And I will not pretend there was no joy in that. There was. There is a particular aliveness that comes from pushing against the edges of what the world believes is possible. I have felt it. I know its texture. But I also know, and this is the knowledge that only arrived after I had paid enough to earn it, that velocity, by itself, goes nowhere that matters. Speed without direction is just motion, and motion, without someone to return to, without someone who holds the place you left and is genuinely glad when you come back, motion like that is a very elaborate form of running in place. I stopped running in place, slowly, imperfectly, with more backsliding than I would like to count. But I stopped. And what I found when I stopped, what filled the space that the running had been occupying, was something I want to describe to you as carefully as I can, because I think it is something you already know the shape of, even if you have not had it recently enough. What I found was gratitude. Not the performed kind. Not the kind you express because it is the correct thing to express in a given moment. The real kind. Sudden, almost physical, arriving without warning in the middle of an ordinary moment and making that moment feel like it contains everything. I found it in small things first. The specific quality of a conversation that goes somewhere neither person planned. The feeling of being in a room with someone and having no agenda between you. No performance, no negotiation, just two people being honestly present with each other. The way that kind of presence feels different in your body than any other kind of being with someone. The way it settles something. The way it settles without words. You are not alone in this. You do not have to carry this by yourself. You are here, and I am here, and that is enough for right now. That feeling, I want that for you. Not as a wish, not as a vague hope that something nice finds its way to you eventually. As an intention. As something I believe is not only possible but close. Closer than the fear has been telling you. Closer than the voice that says the timing has passed. Close in the way that real things are close when you stop racing against them and simply allow them to arrive. And here is what I have come to understand about arrival. About the moments when something you have been reaching toward finally reaches back. They do not look the way you imagined. Not usually. The thing I imagined always had a certain shape, a certain grandeur, a certain quality of obvious significance that would make it easy to recognize. The things that actually mattered never arrived that way. They arrived sideways, quietly, in moments I was not prepared for, with people I was not expecting, in the middle of days that had given me no reason to anticipate anything important. Real things have a way of arriving like that, like they do not want to give you time to talk yourself out of receiving them. So, I want to say something about receiving, about the specific art of letting something good land without immediately looking for what is wrong with it, without immediately constructing the case against it, without letting the part of you that has been hurt before take over the room and start running its familiar analysis. All the ways this could go wrong, all the reasons to be careful, all the evidence from previous chapters that suggests caution is the appropriate response. I know that part of you. I have the same part, and that part is not your enemy. It is trying to protect you. But protection that prevents receiving is not protection anymore. It is a different kind of loss. It is the loss of things that were trying to reach you, but could not get past the wall you built with completely understandable materials. Let some things past the wall. That is what I am asking. Not everything. Not recklessly. Not without the wisdom the years have given you. But some things. The things that feel genuine. The things that do not ask you to be less than you are. The things that arrive without agenda, without the quality of someone trying to get something from you rather than simply be with you. Those things, let them in. Make room. Because the room you make for them will not stay empty. It will fill with exactly what you made it for. I want to tell you something about what real love looks like in the later chapters. Not what it is supposed to look like, not the version that gets put in cards or said in speeches. What it actually looks like when two people who have lived real lives find each other and decide to stop pretending they do not need what they need. It looks like honesty that does not require courage anymore, because you have both decided that honesty is simply the way you talk to each other, the default setting, the thing you return to automatically rather than something you have to work yourself up to. It looks like comfort that is not boring, because real comfort, the kind between two people who genuinely know each other, has a texture that is nothing like boredom. It is warm and specific and deeply personal. It is the comfort of being with someone who knows which stories you have already told and loves them anyway, who knows your opinions about small things and finds them interesting rather than tiresome, who has seen you on the days when you were not your best self and did not update their opinion of you based on those days. It looks like laughter. Real laughter. The kind that arrives suddenly and belongs only to the two of you, that references something no one else would understand. That makes you feel young, not because it pretends the years did not happen, but because it proves that joy does not require youth to be genuine. It looks like silence that is not empty. The silence of two people who have run out of things they need to say and discovered that sitting together in the quiet is its own form of conversation. It looks like being thought of. The small, specific, unremarkable ways that someone carries you with them through their day. A thing they saw that made them think of you. A question they say for you because you would have a particular perspective on it. The simple, extraordinary fact of being in someone's mind when you are not in the room. That is what love actually looks like. Not the peak moments, the ordinary ones, the Tuesday afternoon ones, the ones that do not require anything historic to be happening. Those ordinary moments, accumulated, consistent, chosen, and reclaimed every day, are what a life together is actually made of, and they are available. They are real. They exist in the world right now, waiting to be inhabited by two people who are finally ready to stop treating their own need for them as something slightly embarrassing and start treating it as the entirely reasonable, entirely human, entirely beautiful thing that it is. You are ready to inhabit that. I can feel it in how you're receiving this. And the fact that nothing I have said has made you pull back, and the fact that you are still here, still listening, still allowing this to reach you, that is not a passive thing. That is a choice, and the choice to stay open, to keep listening, to let something in. That choice is already an act of courage. It is already a step toward the thing you've been telling yourself might not be possible anymore. It is possible. Everything I have described is possible. Not in some idealized, frictionless version of reality, where everything is easy and nothing requires work. In the real version, the one with Tuesday afternoons and small disagreements and days when you are tired and the connection still holds anyway. In the version that asks something of you and gives something back in equal measure, that version is possible for you. Right now, in this exact season of your life, with everything you carry and everything you know and everything you are, I have arrived at something I want to say very plainly, without ornament, without anything extra around it, just the thing itself, clean and direct, the way the most important things deserve to be said. You are not too old to be loved the way you deserve. You are not too complicated. You are not too much of anything, and you are not too little of anything. You are not past the point where something real can find you. You are not required to make peace with loneliness, because the years have accumulated past a certain number. You are not obligated to shrink your wanting into something that makes other people more comfortable. You do not owe the world a quieter version of your need for connection. You do not have to earn the right to be chosen. You simply have to stop standing in your own way long enough for the choosing to reach you. That is all. That is the whole instruction. Stop standing in your own way. I know that sounds simpler than it feels from the inside. I know that the standing in your own way is not something you are doing on purpose, not something you chose with full awareness, not something that feels like a wall from where you are standing, because from where you are standing it feels like wisdom or realism, or the appropriate response to a life that has taught you certain things about what to expect. I understand that. I lived inside my own version of it for longer than I should have. But I also know what it looked like from the outside, from the perspective of someone who could see what I was blocking. And, from the outside, it looked like a person with everything they needed to be happy, choosing not to be, for reasons that made sense in isolation but added up, together, to an unnecessary kind of loss. Do not choose an unnecessary loss. You have had losses that were not optional, the ones life brought to you without asking your permission, the ones that arrived and changed everything and could not be undone. Those losses were real, and they mattered, and they cost you something genuine. But this particular loss, the loss of deciding that love and connection and the fullness of being truly known are no longer available to you, this one is optional. This one is a choice. And you can make a different one. I made a different one. I am still making it, daily, with all the imperfection that implies, and what it has given me, the returning, the reopening, the slow and sometimes uncomfortable process of letting myself be reached again. What it has given me is something I would not trade for any of the impressive things on the other side of the ledger. It has given me the feeling of being alive in a way that accomplishment alone never produced. The feeling that the days are connected to something that matters beyond their own completion. The feeling that I am not just moving through time, but actually inhabiting it. Fully, presently, with someone else inhabiting it alongside me. That is what I want for you. That specific feeling, not as a concept, as a daily reality, as the texture of your actual life. in the actual days that are still ahead of you. And there are more of them than the fear has been counting, more possibility in them than the closing down voice has been willing to acknowledge, more warmth waiting inside them than you have let yourself anticipate. Anticipate it now. Let yourself anticipate it. Not with desperation, not with grasping, but with the quiet, grounded, open eyed anticipation of someone who knows what she wants, knows she deserves it, and has finally decided to stop arguing with her own deserving. You deserve warmth. You deserve to be known. You deserve someone who thinks of you in the middle of ordinary days and is glad you exist. You deserve the Tuesday afternoon version of love. Steady, specific, chosen, real. You deserve to be surprised by joy in the chapters you thought were winding down. You deserve every single thing I have described tonight, and more that neither of us has words for yet. And I believe, with the certainty of a man who learned this the hard way, who paid the full price for understanding it, who would not be saying it if he did not know it to be absolutely true. I believe that you are going to find it, or it is going to find you. Or both, the way real things usually work. Not one party seeking and the other waiting, but two people moving, separately and then together, toward the same warmth at the same time, arriving at it from different directions, and recognizing each other when they do. That recognition is coming. Stay open for it. Stay reachable. Stay exactly as you are, because exactly as you are is more than enough. It always has been. That is my arrival. That is where this message lands. Right here, with you, in this quiet, in this moment that belongs only to us. And I need you to know, truly, simply, without anything complicated attached to it, that I am glad you listened. That you being here, receiving this, staying with it all the way to this place, that matters to me. Not as an audience, as a person, the specific person I've been speaking to this entire time, the one I could feel on the other side of every word. The one whose life I have been holding in my mind was something that feels very much like care. You matter. Fully. Right now. Exactly as you are.